So excited to be back. So this is our follow-up to work-life balance. And I wish that I could say that we could just have a topic of work-life balance, figure it out, talk about it, and we'd all get it figured out. But we know that's not the case, right?
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Wouldn't
It would be fantastic.
We would have solved so many of the world's problems with just that one topic, right? So I think in our podcast or in our show, live show, when we talked about work-life balance, we came to the conclusion that it really doesn't exist, that it really is about prioritization and figuring out, how to shift things. And it's not about balance, right? It's figuring out what at that moment do I really need to focus on? What needs to take my priority? And then shifting other things. So it really isn't balance. And I think, again, we talked about giving ourselves grace, and we got to do that. We have to do that, especially as women. I think we tend to take on too many things. Actually, before we started this segment, we were just having that conversation about how the three of us have multiple things going on, and we're sharing our frustrations and the anxiety that we experience, and we know if we're experiencing it, our audience is as well. And I just love that we can have that transparency here with the three of us, and it goes back to support system, because when you're struggling, you really need to have that support system. If we didn't have each other to kind of bounce this off of, what do we really have? So I would really take a step back, especially if you're listening and thinking to yourself, wow, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I'm at a point where I'm just going to break, crack. I don't know. Really think about, who is my support system? Who can I reach out to now? And really talk through this, because sometimes you just need to talk it through, figure out.
Well, that's what I did.
Yeah.
I mean, at the beginning, I said, hey, look, Cynthia, Melissa, I am feeling anxious. I am feeling overwhelmed. And I think part of that, what's so important about, one, having that support system, but also feeling comfortable enough to ask for help. And that's what I did. I said, hey, look, this is how I'm feeling. And Cynthia and Melissa, you're like, okay, so let's figure this out. Let's just brainstorm. Let's just talk it out. We are here for you. And yeah, I felt so much better. But, number one, having that support system, but then two, being comfortable enough to ask for help, because that can often take courage. And, there have been moments in my life where I haven't asked for help. I try and go at it alone, or you think, okay, I can tough it out. I'll just, continue on. And that doesn't do you any good. I mean, asking for help is one of the most important skills to have.
Yeah.
Yes. But very importantly is asking the right people, because it's happened to me before where I'm asking the wrong person, and instead of them providing me with encouragement, it's more of, well, you're just overreacting. Well, you just need to take a deep breath, because that's what women do. We have to manage it all. We have to carry the load. Those aren't the kind of people that we need to go to. So be particular as to who we ask, right? Because if Melissa and I aren't supportive of you, Stephanie, then we're not doing a very good job of being your friend and showing you love and encouragement. So yeah, be choosy as to who you go to, and pick the right accountability partners, and, build your sphere of support. Right?
No, that's so important, because I think a lot of times when we ask for help, a lot of time we don't ask the right person necessarily, and that could be very detrimental. So I'm curious how you choose, because I know that we talked about this. You want to choose accountability partners, one, who have your best interests at heart, two, who are slightly different from you. But how can you tell? Like, if someone has never even thought about having an accountability partner, how do you know if it's the right person? How do you really know if this person's in your corner or not?
Yeah.
Well, for me, I was choosing the wrong people. So,
but how did you know?
Right.
Well, because I kept smacking my head and walking right into the wall and not getting what I needed, until I really learned about personalities. And, we talked about DISC multiple times, and me realizing, self-awareness. Stephanie, you talk about knowing our authentic self. We got to start within ourselves first, and then go outward. And so once I really learned who I am, what my strengths are and what my lesser strengths are, then now I started having real conversations, healthy conflict conversations with my support system. I was choosing different people to help me instead of the same kind of people like me that are going, oh, girl, you just need a hug. Oh, girl, no, I'm totally with you. You're right. No, I don't want people to tell me I'm right and, surround myself with yes people. I want people to bring healthy conflict to the table. I want them to ask me questions like the two of y'all have done, in conversations with me where I'm sharing with you frustrations, anxiety and the questions that y'all ask me, which by the way, asking people questions, right, promotes and encourages critical thinking, which is exactly what you did for me. And so again, for me, it's learning who I am and not going to the same people that are just like me because they're going to give me the wrong answers.
Yeah, I think that's important.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's important. Not choosing people like you. You mentioned that, Stephanie, also is for me, it's trust. I think everything you're hitting on really comes back to trust. So if it's someone that you're thinking, hey, this person is pretty well respected or they've been recommended, maybe it's someone you don't know. I mean, everyone's on social these days. So take advantage of looking at their profiles. What value are they adding? What content are they putting out there? You can learn so much from someone just from kind of seeing who they are on social media and have an intro dialogue with the person. Say, hey, you've been recommended. I'm really looking for an accountability partner. Tell me a little bit and kind of start to build that rapport and figure out if that's someone that you feel like you could trust that would be fully honest with you and really tell you what you need to hear. I think the biggest mistake is staying in our own head, like Cynthia says, when the crazy bee comes out and just starts saying all these, your mind starts racing with all these crazy thoughts. And again,
that check in our head is so mean.
Yes. So that's the most important thing, is to really take a step back and find that person. So I'm sure you have people in your circle now that you haven't even thought of. So, really just write it down. I say do a brain dump, especially, if you're at a point where you're at a breaking point anyway, you're not going to be able to think clearly anyway. It's better just to grab a piece of paper and pen and literally start writing down, anyone you can think of in your circles, maybe at church, maybe, at your kids' sports games, PTA meet, whatever. Just think of every single person and think about who would be a good accountability partner for me, someone that's driven, that, is a goal setter. We all have those people in our lives that, you want to emulate them. So I would look for someone like that.
And I know that we've talked about in our show, right? What is it, Cynthia? It's the brain, the heart, and the gut. And I feel like yes,
logic and heart, and then our gut, we all have this internal guidance system naturally.
Yes. So when it checks off all the boxes and for me also, it's someone who is a real sounding board, who has great advice, but also uplifts me. I love walking away from a conversation, not only having new insight, but also feeling better about the situation, right? It can't, no one can necessarily take away all the stress or, all the issues, but you can feel like you're better equipped to handle all of it, which I think is so important to have in an accountability partner. You're like, you know what? I can do tough things. Stress is always going to be there, but I can handle it. I can face it. I can overcome it. So I think that's important too.
Well, you brought up the three brains, and this takes me right to our guts or instincts. Some of us naturally pay attention to it, and then there are others that, but when your gut is telling you, your stomach is telling you with those butterflies, those feelings, because it goes into a physical and emotional thing. So you feel it physically and emotionally, right? When things aren't going well. And so, Stephanie, you brought it up when we actually taped the live show, where you shared, well, my husband will look at me and go, things just aren't working. How are you? Are you picking up on this? This is where, people that are closest to us our gut will find a way, intuition, instinct finds a way, our internal guidance system finds a way with energy to get someone to actually bring it to our attention sometimes. And it's completely up to us if we listen and pay attention to it.
Right. That's where the
So,
self-awareness comes in, because when you it reminds me, of course, of the story that I shared, is that I ignored I ignored my gut. I ignored how I was feeling, and then I also ignored what my husband was saying. So it was a journey to self-awareness. It's a continual journey. But yes, now I know myself well enough to take a beat, to not have that knee-jerk, hey, I'm going to get defensive and I'm going to get upset, and then say, no, wait, hold on. You might have a point there. Let me just digest what you have shared with me as my accountability partner, someone who does have my best interests at heart. Okay, now I can see where you're going with this. But yeah, I mean, that was my initial instinct all the time, was like wait a second. What are you telling me? You're not having my best interests at heart. And it was like, okay, well, maybe I'm the one who's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's a hard pill to swallow, isn't it? That's like a great big one you put on your tongue and fill your mouth with water so you can swallow that one.
Well, that's why it took a few years for me to swallow that pill.
Yeah.
Yes. What do you think, Melissa?
No, I agree 100%. That's the hardest thing sometimes. So yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. We also talked about the challenge with especially the three of us, and probably lots of people that are listening right now, lots of ladies listening, and the difficulty to say no, right? As we're prioritizing, nobody's doing it with us. It's me, myself, and I, right? Those three people that live within us. But we're looking at this list and feeling this angst and guilt to say no and erase something off of our priorities or move it. So how are y'all doing on how do you say no? How are you working on saying no to yourself and then to others?
Well, so I've been really doing a lot of reflecting over many years. But what I realized was I had a mediocre mindset. And I say that meaning I saw myself, I guess, in a mediocre way. And so I wasn't prioritizing myself and my needs. And it was only, I would say in the past 2 years or so, 3 years, where I started shifting into a $1 million mindset. And it was like, no, I'm pretty darn great. I am worth it. I am, I'm worth $1 million. And so when I elevated myself in my mind, that empowered me to say no, because I was looking at it from a different perspective. When I was feeling mediocre, I would of course say yes, because I didn't want to disappoint, because I didn't feel like I was worthy of saying no, right? I wasn't good, whatever the case was. But when I felt, no, I'm actually important in my own life, that empowered me to say no, because my time was worth it.
Yes.
And my efforts were worth it. And before it was like, well, okay, maybe my time isn't as precious as other people's time. So I started learning to say no when I shifted my mindset from putting myself in that mediocre category almost to, no, I'm important.
I love that. So how, obviously what you did is you created a new belief system, which is my wheelhouse. I love that. So what are some things that you did to shift that mindset from mediocre to that $1 million mindset?
Oh gosh, what did I do? I mean, it was a journey. I think it was, almost so gradual, but I finally, I realized and I recognized that I was letting fear drive my decision-making. And because I let fear control my life in so many respects, I was demeaning myself. And when I finally was able to break that chain, it opened up those possibilities for me. But no, it was very gradual. It was so gradual that I don't even think I recognized it until I almost like I woke up with it.
Wow. So you kind of had like an aha where you're like, no, I'm not letting fear stop me anymore.
Yes, because I think what it was is I just didn't feel good. I wasn't feeling good and I couldn't pinpoint why. And I started to rationalize. I started to place that responsibility on all these parts of my life. And then I was like, wait a second. No, that's not it. And I had to do the work. It's here. It's in me.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized it was my mindset, because I was like, no, it doesn't matter what scenario it is. It's me. Like, I need to figure this out. It starts with the internal work.
Yeah.
I have a question.
That. Yeah.
I have a question. So do you ladies believe that our mindset and the different shifts and how we're looking at our life, we're reflecting back and we're looking where we're at now, and then we're looking forward. Have y'all noticed, or have you felt that it's like a light switch at different ages and phases? Like in my 30s, when I turned 30, when I turned 35, when I turned 40, when I turned 45, and 50 and 55, the double nickel. So I don't know. What do y'all think about that? Do you resonate with that? And do you attribute some of, this work-life prioritization? Because it's different today for me at 56 than it was when I was 36.
Yeah. I mean, personally speaking, I can say yes, because when I think about, my mid 20s, I was progressing in my career, started having kids, gotten so much debt. And at the end of the day, like, I was living paycheck to paycheck. So my whole mindset, right, was putting food on the table and getting my butt to work. I mean, so to be honest, it was like, well, my kids weren't, I don't want to say they weren't a priority, but I had to get to work first. You know what I mean? So, as I've gotten older and I'm not, in that financial situation anymore where I have, I'm not having to worry about, living paycheck to paycheck, then now I feel like definitely my mindset has had to shift, because my priorities are definitely different. So I do think that is very relevant for some people when it comes to different stages in their life. Maybe not for everybody, but for me personally, it's a lot of growth, a lot of development, right? It's all of that, more maturity, I think, in how I prioritize. But yeah, for me, it definitely has it's shifted a lot over the last few decades, for sure.
Yeah, mine isn't so much with age. Mine is really kind of my stage in life, like you said, phases. So yeah, it's definitely pre-kids, post-kids. I mean, it's completely changed everything. Before marriage, after marriage has changed. Even renting and owning has changed. So I think it's the different phases and stages, but not necessarily the ages. And I remember, gosh, what was I? I think I was turning 35. I think it was 35, which was not a good birthday because I was not at the stage.
Just a couple of years ago. Come on.
Right. That was yesterday. No, but I think it was 35. Yeah, I think it was. Anyway, it was not a good birthday because I was not where I had thought I would be. I think it was either 35 or 30, and I can't remember, which is so sad. But I thought I would be so much more established, so much further in my mind. Growing up, it's like you think when you're 30, you're going to own a house, you're going to be married, you're going to have kids, you're going to have your profession. It's done. Like, life is done at 30. And then when I turned 30, I was like, okay, it's not even started. Like, what's going on? So that, yeah, definitely it's interesting. It's a journey, as is everything. But yeah, I mean, I'm not where I thought I would be, but you know what? I'm better equipped to handle that, that reality.
Yeah. I guess let's go back to, the struggle with no, because, I wanted to touch on that a little bit. And I was thinking about what Stephanie said, from switching her mediocre mindset to more of a $1 million mindset. What I have learned over the years is the more I've practiced no, and the more I've shifted my mindset, you attract the right people. So it's kind of like attracting that audience, that $1 million audience, right? People that have that $1 million mindset So you'll probably agree with me, Stephanie, that you're not getting inundated with people asking you to do all of these things that maybe in your prior life, with your prior mindset, you would have immediately said yes to. You're probably not even getting those requests much anymore because you've changed the way your mindset is now, right? So you're attracting a different type of person.
Right. People respond to me differently. And that brings me, and I think I talked about this in the show, but there was one time where I was asked to do something for work and I said yes. I mean, I was like trying to pull that word back. And I hadn't even thought about the reality of the situation was both my kids were sick, my husband was sick, and I had said yes to going away on a business trip. And my husband was like, do you just realize what you did? And I was like, well, I had to say yes. That was my mediocre mindset. And he's like, no, you need to call your boss right now and explain the situation to her. And I was so nervous. Real truth. I hid in my closet and I called her because I thought it was a safe space.
Wow.
And I explained it and I felt so apologetic. Like it was my fault that my kids were sick and my husband was sick. And she's like, I get it. You need to concentrate on your family and prioritize that. And she's like, don't even worry. Don't apologize. And I was like, oh my gosh. And yeah. And I was like, I just completely had that mediocre mindset. And I said, yes, even though it was so, not smart. It wasn't the right thing to do. So, but yes, now I feel like because I give off something different, people respond differently to me in a positive way.
Yeah.
That also just drives home the point that what we believe in here, our thoughts and our emotions are wrapped up with each other, right, Melissa? And so you project this energy out and then like a magnet, pull it towards you, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's creating those neurons, those segues in your brain. And yeah, that is real.
So that takes us right to the power of our mindset as we're prioritizing what's important to us, right? Yeah. And it starts in the morning. So it's not something that we do one time, right? Or once every 10 years or once every 5 years or even once a year. It's something that we have to do every single day and make that commitment or, follow through with the covenant that we made with ourselves, that promise, right? Yeah. Right, Melissa?
It does. And if you've listened to our shows, we've talked about the vision board, affirmations, doing the audio clips, mind map movies, all of that. And if you're thinking, gosh, I haven't started any of that, even though it sounded like a great idea, I love just starting your morning with looking in the mirror and telling yourself how wonderful you are. Whatever it is, those small little things can make such a difference. And I'm always telling all my friends, like, especially if we're driving in the car and like they start being negative, I'm like pulling down the mirror, like, look in that mirror. Tell yourself you're amazing, you're wonderful, you're confident, whatever it is they're struggling with.
Well, it's like exercise. We do I work out in the morning, but it's the emotional, spiritual, mental workout.
Yes.
We need to incorporate that in our morning routine. Being in tune with your spiritual self, your mental, your emotional sides. We need to work those aspects out as well and have them in the best shape ever. It's not just the physical, it's everything else. But yeah, no, I love that. So that my little timer went off because I know that we could talk forever, but obviously, people have things to do.
Places to go and people to see and problems to solve, ladies. Right. Problems to solve.
They have mirrors to look in and tell themselves.
Yes, and have Melissa say, girl, tell yourself you're worthy.
That's right.
You're beautiful. You're so beautiful. You're going to have a great day today.
That's right.
I love that. You should do a video of just that, Melissa.
I should.
I think people would watch. And every morning. I need Melissa to tell me to look in that mirror.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to go do a
oh my gosh. Okay. So I just had inspiration for Conversations That Coach. We need to actually make a mirror and call it Melissa's mirror.
I love it. Let's do it.
Like this was on the fly. Don't you feel like people, I would like look in Melissa's mirror.
Yeah.
Right. I love that. Anyway, just food for thought as we're wrapping up our podcast for the day.
Yes, I love it. And at the end of the day, again, there is no work-life balance. It really is about prioritization. So get that support person, find, that accountability support person, find other ways to say no, continue to work on that mindset. Shifting that mindset is just so key to you achieving those goals and everything that you want to accomplish. So good stuff.
Yes, and it's okay to say no. It's good to say no from time to time.
It's good to say no, even when it's uncomfortable. Use another word then. Give them choices. You can have A or you can have B.
That's right.
Yes, I love that. All right, we're going to wrap up this podcast, and we'll see you guys again next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, ladies.